Hello there, and welcome back to Dreamland Science. Tonight, we are going to explore something that lives inside every one of us. Something so quiet you may not even notice it happening. The science of kindness. But before we begin, let me remind you, you do not need to pay attention. You do not need to remember a single thing. If your eyes grow heavy, if your thoughts begin to drift, that is perfectly fine. That is exactly what this space is for. If this channel has become part of your evening routine, and you would like to help others find their way here too, a gentle tap on the like or subscribe button helps more than you know. One sleepy soul at a time. Now, settle in. Tonight, you will learn that every act of kindness, no matter how small, sends a quiet wave of healing through your entire body, from the oxytocin in your brain to the rhythm of your heart, from the telomeres in your DNA to the mirror neurons that connect you to every person you have ever loved. Kindness is not just something you do for others. It is medicine your body makes for itself. So let your shoulders soften, let your jaw unclench, and let these quiet truths keep you company tonight. Every time you do something kind, whether it is a gentle word, a quiet gesture, or even a warm thought, your brain begins to release a molecule called oxytocin. This small chemical messenger travels through your bloodstream within seconds, reaching your heart, your muscles, and your nervous system. It is one of the fastest-acting hormones in the human body, and it begins its work before you even realize what you have done. Researchers at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center have studied oxytocin for decades and found that its release is not limited to physical touch or romantic love. Even witnessing an act of generosity can trigger its production. The hormone was first identified in the early 1900s, and since then, over 5,000 studies have explored its role in human bonding and healing. Imagine a single drop of honey dissolving into warm tea, slowly, gently, sweetening everything it touches. That is what oxytocin does inside your body. It moves through you like sunlight through a window, warming places you did not know were cold. Perhaps you might notice your breathing beginning to slow, just a little. Perhaps there is a softness forming somewhere behind your eyes, a gentle heaviness that feels almost like relief. And as the oxytocin settles into your blood, your body begins to remember something it has always known, that kindness is not just an idea. It is chemistry. Scientists have given oxytocin many names over the years, but the one that seems to stay is the love hormone. It earned this name because it appears in nearly every situation involving trust, affection, and connection between human beings. It floods the brain during moments of closeness, and it lingers long after the moment has passed. A team at Claremont Graduate University, led by neuroeconomist Paul Zak, found that oxytocin levels rise not only during physical embrace, but also during acts of trust between strangers. In one study from 2005, participants who received a nasal spray of oxytocin were significantly more willing to share money with someone they had never met. Think of oxytocin as a gentle lantern carried through a dark forest. It does not remove the darkness, but it makes the path feel safer. It does not solve every problem, but it softens the edges of the ones you carry. Perhaps you might notice your hands resting a little more loosely now. Perhaps your fingers have uncurled, just slightly, as if they have decided to let go of something they no longer need to hold. And in the quiet of this moment, The love hormone drifts through your veins like music through an empty room. Soft, unhurried, and entirely yours. You do not need to perform a grand gesture to trigger the healing chemistry of kindness. Research suggests that even thinking a kind thought, silently wishing someone well, imagining a warm embrace, or remembering a moment of tenderness, is enough to shift the chemical balance in your blood. A study published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology in 2013 found that participants who practiced loving-kindness meditation for just 7 minutes showed measurable increases in positive emotions and decreases in stress hormones. The body, it seems, does not distinguish between a kind act and a kind thought. Both activate the same pathways. Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake and gently dropping a single pebble into the water. The ripple begins at your fingertips and spreads outward in widening circles, touching shores you cannot see. That is what a kind thought does inside your body. It begins small and expands quietly in every direction. Perhaps you might notice a gentle warmth forming somewhere in your chest. Perhaps it feels like the first moment of sunlight after a long, grey morning, not demanding attention, just arriving softly. And with that single thought, something inside you has already begun to change. Quietly, gently, without asking for anything in return. Once oxytocin is released from the hypothalamus deep inside your brain, it enters your bloodstream and begins to travel. Within moments, it reaches your cardiovascular system, your digestive system, and your peripheral nervous system. It does not stop at one destination. It moves through your entire body, like warmth spreading through a blanket left in the sun. Neuroscientists at the University of California, San Diego, have mapped the journey of oxytocin through the body and found that it interacts with receptors in the heart, the gut, and even the skin. The hormone has been shown to reduce the perception of pain and increase the sensation of comfort and safety, which is why it is released in such abundance during moments of human connection. Picture a river of soft golden light flowing through a landscape at dusk, winding past mountains, slipping through valleys, filling every hollow with warmth. That is the path oxytocin follows through your body. It does not rush. It does not force. It simply flows. Perhaps you might notice your forehead beginning to smooth. Perhaps the small muscles around your eyes have softened, as if the light behind your eyelids has grown just a shade warmer. And as the oxytocin continues its quiet journey, it carries a message to every cell it touches. You are safe. You are warm. You are held. When two people embrace, their brains release a surge of oxytocin that helps them feel connected, safe, and calm. But here is something remarkable. The very same hormone is released when you simply perform an act of kindness. Your brain does not require physical touch to create this feeling. A kind word, a thoughtful gesture, a moment of genuine care. These are enough. Research from the University of Zurich, published in 2008, showed that oxytocin release is closely tied to prosocial behavior, actions intended to benefit others. The study found that people who engaged in cooperative acts showed higher levels of oxytocin than those who did not, regardless of whether physical contact was involved. Imagine being wrapped in a warm blanket on a cold evening, the kind that holds you without asking anything in return. That is the feeling oxytocin creates. And your body can create it not just through touch, but through the simple, quiet act of being kind. Perhaps you might notice a heaviness settling into your limbs, not the heaviness of exhaustion, but the heaviness of comfort, the kind that says you do not need to move, you do not need to try. And in the stillness that follows, your body remembers what a hug feels like, not because someone is holding you, but because kindness has wrapped itself around you from the inside. When oxytocin enters your bloodstream, it does something extraordinary. It stimulates the production of nitric oxide in the walls of your blood vessels. Nitric oxide is a tiny molecule, but it plays a vital role in cardiovascular health. It causes your blood vessels to relax and widen, allowing blood to flow more freely and reducing the strain on your heart. Researchers at SSM Health have documented this cascade in detail, showing that the connection between kindness and vascular health is not abstract. It is measurable. Oxytocin triggers nitric oxide. Nitric oxide triggers vasodilation, and vasodilation leads to lower blood pressure. The entire process takes only moments. Picture a frozen stream in early spring, slowly beginning to thaw. The ice softens, the water begins to move again, and life returns to the riverbanks. That is what happens inside your blood vessels when kindness flows through them. The walls relax, the pressure eases, and everything begins to move a little more freely. Perhaps you might notice your feet beginning to feel warmer, as if the blood is flowing more easily to the edges of your body. Perhaps your toes have softened, settling more deeply into whatever rests beneath them. And as the nitric oxide opens your blood vessels just a little wider, the healing has already begun. Quiet, steady, and as natural as breathing. It may seem surprising, but a single act of generosity can have a measurable effect on your blood pressure. When you give, whether it is your time, your attention, or a small gesture of care, the oxytocin and nitric oxide cascade that follows can lower your blood pressure within minutes. The effect is not dramatic, but it is real, and it accumulates over time. Dr. David Hamilton, a biochemist and author of The 5 Side Effects of Kindness, has written extensively about the cardiovascular benefits of compassion. He notes that regular acts of kindness create a sustained reduction in blood pressure, similar to the effects of moderate exercise or dietary changes. Imagine a balloon that has been held too tightly for too long. Now imagine someone gently loosening their grip, just enough for the pressure to ease. The balloon does not burst. It simply relaxes. That is what generosity does to your cardiovascular system. It releases the tension you did not know you were carrying. Perhaps you might notice your jaw has softened again. Perhaps the space between your teeth has widened, just slightly, as if your body has decided to exhale something it has been holding all day. And with each quiet act of giving, your heart beats a little more gently, a little more freely, as if it has been waiting for permission to rest. For a long time, scientists believed that the health benefits of kindness belonged primarily to the person who received it. But over the past 2 decades, research has shown something beautiful. The person who gives kindness experiences the same chemical cascade as the person who receives it. In many cases, the giver benefits even more. A study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that providing social support to others was associated with reduced activity in the stress-related regions of the brain. the researchers concluded that giving care is just as healing as receiving it, and that the act of kindness creates a feedback loop of well-being for both parties. Picture two candles standing side by side. When one flame reaches over to light the other, it does not grow dimmer. It stays just as bright. Kindness works the same way. Giving it away does not diminish you. If anything, it makes your own light steadier. Perhaps you might notice a softness somewhere deep in your chest, a kind of warmth that does not come from outside, but from within. Perhaps it has been there all along, waiting quietly for you to notice. And in the gentle glow of that warmth, both giver and receiver rest, healed by the same quiet act. When you help someone, even in a small way, your brain releases a combination of chemicals that researchers have come to call the helper's high. This phrase was first used by psychologist Alan Lukes in 1991, after he surveyed over 3,000 volunteers and found that the majority reported a distinct physical sensation of warmth, energy, and calm after helping others. The helper's high is driven by a blend of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, the same chemicals involved in exercise, laughter, and chocolate. The Mayo Clinic has confirmed that this neurochemical response is real, measurable, and consistently reproducible across populations and cultures. Imagine walking through a meadow just after rain, when the air is cool and the earth smells of new beginnings. There is a lightness in your chest, a clarity in your mind, and a quiet sense that everything is exactly as it should be. That is the helper's high. Not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakably real. Perhaps you might notice your shoulders have dropped a little further from your ears. Perhaps the muscles along your neck have loosened, as if they have finally agreed to stop guarding whatever they were protecting. And as the helper's high settles over you, it asks nothing in return. It simply arrives, like the first cool breeze on a warm evening. Dopamine is one of the most well-known neurotransmitters in the human brain. It plays a central role in motivation, pleasure, and reward, and it is released during activities your brain considers beneficial. Eating, learning, laughing, and moving. What many people do not realize is that dopamine is also released during acts of kindness. Neuroscientists at the National Institute of Mental Health have used brain imaging to show that the reward centers of the brain, particularly the ventral striatum and the prefrontal cortex, light up during acts of generosity. A 2006 study in the journal Science found that giving money to others activated these areas more strongly than receiving money. Imagine a firefly blinking to life in a dark garden. It does not illuminate the entire night, but it creates a small, perfect glow, enough to remind you that light exists. That is what dopamine does inside your brain when you are kind. It sparks quietly, and the glow lingers. Perhaps you might notice your eyelids growing heavier, as if they are being weighed down by something soft and invisible. Perhaps the world behind your closed eyes has begun to shimmer, just faintly, like distant stars. And with each small act of kindness, another firefly blinks to life inside you. Quiet, patient, waiting for nothing but the chance to glow. The dopamine your brain releases during kindness is the very same molecule released when you eat a piece of dark chocolate or share a genuine laugh with someone you love. Your brain does not have separate chemicals for different pleasures. It uses the same reward pathways, the same neurotransmitters. and the same regions of the cortex. Kindness, it turns out, is filed in the same category as joy. Researchers at University College London found in 2016 that social reward, the feeling of helping or connecting with others, activates the same dopaminergic pathways as food reward. The brain treats kindness and chocolate as equally valuable sources of pleasure. Picture a child laughing in a sunlit room, the kind of laughter that fills every corner without trying. That sound creates a warmth that spreads outward, touching everyone who hears it. Dopamine works the same way. It does not stay in one place. It moves through your brain like laughter through an open window. Perhaps you might notice a gentleness in your stomach, a quieting of whatever tension may have gathered there. Perhaps it feels like warmth, settling into still water. And somewhere in the chemistry of this moment, your brain is smiling, not because you asked it to, but because kindness gave it a reason. Deep inside your brain, there are structures that evolved to help you survive. The ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens, and the prefrontal cortex. Together, they form the brain's reward circuit, and they are responsible for the feelings of satisfaction, motivation, and pleasure that guide your behavior. Kindness activates this circuit as powerfully as any other positive experience. A landmark study by Jorge Moll and colleagues at the National Institutes of Health in 2006 used functional MRI to observe the brain during charitable giving. They found that donating money to a cause activated the same regions of the brain as receiving money, and in some cases, the activation was even stronger. Imagine a deep underground river that has been flowing for centuries, carving its way through stone in perfect silence. You cannot see it from the surface, but it shapes the landscape above. That is what the reward circuit does inside your brain. It runs quietly beneath everything, shaping how you feel about the world. Perhaps you might notice your body sinking a little deeper into whatever supports you. Perhaps there is a growing sense of weight, not the kind that burdens, but the kind that anchors. And as the reward centers hum with quiet activation, your brain whispers something it has known for a very long time. Kindness feels good because it is good, and that is enough. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that helps regulate mood, appetite, and sleep. It is sometimes called the feel-good chemical because of its profound effect on emotional well-being, and it rises measurably after even the smallest acts of warmth and kindness. Research published in the Journal of Positive Psychology in 2014 showed that participants who performed small acts of kindness over a 2-week period reported significantly higher levels of life satisfaction and positive mood, effects consistent with increased serotonin activity in the brain. Picture a garden in the early morning, when the dew is still fresh, and every leaf holds a single, perfect drop of light. Serotonin is like that light. It does not arrive with fanfare. It simply appears when the conditions are right, and everything it touches feels a little more alive. Perhaps you might notice a warmth spreading gently across your forehead. Not heat, but something softer, something like the memory of sunlight on a quiet afternoon. And as serotonin rises through your body, it carries a gentle message. You do not need to do more. You do not need to try harder. What you have already given is enough. Serotonin does not only make you feel good, it also helps you sleep. Most of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut, and it plays a crucial role in the production of melatonin, the hormone that regulates your sleep-wake cycle. When serotonin levels are healthy, your body is better equipped to transition from wakefulness to rest. Scientists at the University of Cambridge have shown that serotonin is essential for the brain's ability to switch between behavioral states, including the shift from alertness to drowsiness. A 2018 study in the journal Current Biology found that serotonin-releasing neurons in the dorsal raphe nucleus are among the first to change activity as the brain prepares for sleep. Imagine the sky at dusk, when the bright blue slowly deepens into indigo and the first stars begin to appear. Serotonin is the chemical that paints that transition inside your brain, the gentle fading of alertness, the quiet arrival of rest. Perhaps you might notice your breath has deepened without you asking it to. Perhaps the space between each inhale and exhale has grown just a little wider, like a river widening as it approaches the sea. And as serotonin eases your mind towards sleep, it does not push, it does not pull. It simply makes the path a little softer, a little more inviting. Endorphins are the body's natural painkillers. Tiny molecules produced by the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus that reduce the perception of pain and increase feelings of pleasure. What makes them remarkable in the context of kindness is that you do not need to be the one performing the act. Simply witnessing an act of kindness is enough to trigger their release. Researchers call this phenomenon moral elevation, a term coined by psychologist Jonathan Haidt. In his studies, participants who watched videos of people helping others reported physical sensations of warmth in the chest, a lump in the throat, and a desire to be kind themselves, all consistent with endorphin release. Picture someone placing a warm coat over the shoulders of a stranger on a cold night. You are not the one wearing the coat, and yet something inside you softens. A warmth spreads through your chest as if the kindness reached you too. That is the power of moral elevation. Your body responds to kindness even when it is not directed at you. Perhaps you might notice that your hands feel warmer now. Perhaps the tips of your fingers have softened, as if warmth is slowly finding its way to the edges of your body. And in that soft response, your body proves something science has only recently begun to understand. Kindness does not need to touch you to heal you. It only needs to be near. The endorphins released during acts of kindness are chemically identical to the ones your body produces during gentle physical exercise. A slow walk, a stretch, a swim through calm water. They bind to the same opioid receptors in the brain, creating the same sense of calm, relief, and quiet pleasure. Exercise physiologists at Johns Hopkins University have documented that even low-intensity movement triggers endorphin release, producing what many people describe as a mild, pleasant glow. The same glow has been observed in people who engage in compassionate acts, suggesting that the brain treats kindness and movement as similar forms of self-care. Imagine walking along a forest path in the early evening, when the air is cool and the trees are still. Each step brings a quiet sense of calm, not because you are going anywhere important, but because the motion itself is enough. That is the feeling endorphins create. A gentle, rhythmic peace. Perhaps you might notice your legs growing heavier, not tired, but relaxed. Perhaps the muscles in your calves have begun to let go, settling deeper into rest. And as the endorphins drift through your body, they remind you of something simple. You do not need to run to feel at peace. Sometimes, all you need is to be kind. Your brain does not always need a real-time event to produce healing chemistry. Simply remembering a kind moment, recalling the warmth of a gesture, the softness of a voice, or the comfort of being seen, is enough to activate the same neurochemical pathways involved in the original experience. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio has shown that the brain stores emotional memories as somatic markers, bodily sensations linked to specific experiences. When you recall a kind moment, your body recreates a version of the original feeling, complete with oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin release. A 2011 study in the journal Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience confirmed that recalling positive social interactions activates the medial prefrontal cortex and the insula, areas associated with empathy and emotional warmth. Picture a photograph kept in a drawer, one you do not look at often. But when you do, the feeling it brings is immediate. The colors may have faded, but the warmth has not. That is what a kind memory does inside your brain. It does not need to be fresh to be powerful. Perhaps you might notice a memory of your own surfacing now. Something small, something quiet, something that made you feel safe. Perhaps it arrived without invitation, like a leaf drifting through an open window. And as that memory settles over you, your body responds as if the kindness is happening right now. Because in your brain's chemistry, it is. Chronic inflammation is one of the most significant threats to long-term health. It has been linked to heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, and even depression. And yet, something as simple as giving support to another person has been shown to reduce it. A study supported by the Mayo Clinic and published in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine found that individuals who regularly provided emotional support to others showed lower levels of interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein, two of the most commonly measured markers of systemic inflammation. The researchers noted that this effect was independent of whether the person received support in return. Imagine a candle flame flickering in a drafty room. The flame struggles, bends, and threatens to go out. Now imagine someone gently cupping their hands around it, not to control it, but to protect it. That is what giving support does to the inflammation inside your body. It shields your cells from the wind. Perhaps you might notice a quietness settling in your stomach, a stillness where tension used to be. Perhaps the muscles along your abdomen have softened, as if they have found something steady to rest against. And as inflammation begins to fade, your body settles into a quieter version of itself, a version that has always been there, waiting for kindness to clear the way. Scientists have identified 3 primary neurotransmitters that form what some researchers informally call the kindness cocktail: dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. Together, they create a powerful blend of motivation, mood regulation, and pain relief that activates whenever you engage in compassionate behavior. Dopamine provides the spark of motivation and reward. Serotonin sustains the feeling of well-being and helps you sleep. Endorphins reduce discomfort and create a gentle sense of euphoria. When all 3 are active simultaneously, as they often are during acts of kindness, the result is a state of calm alertness that gradually dissolves into peaceful rest. Picture 3 rivers merging into one, each carrying its own current, its own color, its own warmth. Where they meet, the water becomes deeper, calmer, and more still. That is what happens inside your brain when kindness activates all three chemicals at once. Perhaps you might notice your body beginning to feel heavier in the best possible way, as if you are sinking gently into something soft and deep. Perhaps the boundary between waking and resting has started to blur, and as the three rivers of kindness merge inside you, they carry you forward, slowly, gently, toward a place where nothing is required of you at all. Evolution has wired the human brain to reward cooperative behavior, long before language, long before culture. Early humans survived because they cared for one another. Kindness was not a luxury. It was a survival mechanism. And the brain still carries this ancient design. Evolutionary psychologists at the University of Michigan have proposed that the brain's reward system evolved partly to encourage prosocial behavior. The warmth you feel when you give is not a coincidence. It is a signal from deep within your evolutionary history, telling you that what you are doing matters. Imagine a hearth at the center of a home that has stood for thousands of years. The walls may have changed. The roof may have been rebuilt. But the fire at the center has never gone out. That is the warmth of kindness inside your brain. Ancient, steady, and always there. Perhaps you might notice that the warmth has spread now, from your chest to your arms, from your arms to your hands, from your hands to the very tips of your fingers. Perhaps it feels like being slowly filled with something golden and quiet. And in this ancient warmth, you rest, not because someone told you to, but because your body has remembered how. In 2025, researchers at Harvard University published a comprehensive review of data spanning nearly 4 decades. Their conclusion was striking. People who regularly volunteer their time to help others live longer and report better physical health than those who do not. The study analyzed data from over 200,000 participants across multiple longitudinal studies. After controlling for age, income, education, and pre-existing health conditions, the researchers found that volunteering was associated with a significant reduction in all-cause mortality. The effect was most pronounced in people who volunteered at least 2 hours per week. Picture an old tree in a forest that has weathered countless storms. Its roots run deep, its branches reach wide, and it provides shelter to everything around it. The tree does not grow tall for itself. It grows tall because it is connected to the soil, the rain, and the life that surrounds it. That is what volunteering does to a human life. It deepens the roots. Perhaps you might notice your body has settled even deeper now. Perhaps the surface beneath you feels softer than it did a few minutes ago, as if the world has adjusted itself to hold you more gently. And as the science of giving continues to unfold, it tells a story as old as humanity itself. Those who give, live, and those who live with kindness, live well. Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone. It is released by the adrenal glands in response to perceived danger. And while it is essential for short-term survival, chronic elevation of cortisol can damage the immune system, disrupt sleep, and increase the risk of heart disease. Kindness, it turns out, is one of the most natural ways to lower it. Researchers at the University of British Columbia found in 2015 that participants who performed acts of kindness over a 4-week period showed significant reductions in cortisol levels compared to a control group. The effect was especially strong in participants who reported high baseline stress. Imagine a winter storm slowly passing over a quiet valley. The wind dies down, the snow stops falling, and the sky begins to clear. That is what happens to cortisol when kindness enters your bloodstream. The storm does not vanish instantly, but it begins to ease. The pressure lifts. The air grows still. Perhaps you might notice the muscles along the sides of your neck beginning to loosen. Perhaps the tension that gathered there during the day has started to dissolve, like frost melting in the first light of morning. And as cortisol fades, your body returns to a quieter baseline, a place where rest is not something you chase, but something that finds you. When cortisol levels drop, the effects are felt throughout the body. The heart rate slows, the muscles relax, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, worrying, and overthinking, becomes less active, and the brain's sleep architecture improves, allowing for deeper, more restorative cycles of rest. Sleep researchers at Stanford University have documented that elevated cortisol at night is one of the primary disruptors of slow-wave sleep, the deepest phase of the sleep cycle, during which the body repairs tissue, consolidates memory, and strengthens the immune system. Lowering cortisol before bed through relaxation, kindness, or gratitude has been shown to increase the duration of this critical phase. Picture a lake at midnight, perfectly still, perfectly dark, perfectly quiet. Nothing stirs the surface. No wind, no ripple, no sound. That is what your mind can become when cortisol retreats. A surface so still that even the stars can see their own reflection. Perhaps you might notice your thoughts beginning to slow. Perhaps they have started to drift apart, like clouds separating after a storm, leaving patches of quiet sky between them. And in that quiet sky, sleep waits, patient, unhurried, and always ready for you. The scientific study of compassion is not new. For more than 30 years, researchers across disciplines, neuroscience, psychology, immunology, and cardiology, have investigated how kindness affects the human body. The results, published in thousands of peer-reviewed papers, consistently point in the same direction. Kindness heals. Pioneering work by researchers like Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina, and Tanya Singer at the Max Planck Institute has laid the foundation for what is now called compassion science. These researchers have shown that the brain can be trained to be more compassionate, and that this training produces measurable changes in brain structure, immune function, and emotional resilience. Imagine a library filled with thousands of books, each one telling a different chapter of the same story. The story of how kindness makes us well. Some books are old, their pages yellowed with time. Others are brand new, their ink still fresh. But together, they form a single, unbroken narrative that stretches back decades. Perhaps you might notice that your breathing has found its own rhythm now. Slow, even, and steady. Perhaps you no longer need to think about it at all. And as the decades of research settle into your awareness, they offer a simple truth. Kindness is not a belief. It is a science, and it has been waiting for you all along. Every single act of kindness, no matter how small, how quiet, or how unnoticed, triggers a cascade of healing chemistry inside your body. Oxytocin softens your blood vessels. Dopamine lights up your reward centers. Serotonin steadies your mood. Endorphins ease your pain. And cortisol retreats like a shadow before the dawn. This is not poetry. This is biology. And it has been confirmed by researchers at some of the most respected institutions in the world. Harvard, Stanford, the Mayo Clinic, the Max Planck Institute, and dozens more. The evidence is clear. Kindness is medicine. Imagine standing in a field of wildflowers at the golden hour. When the light is soft and everything glows, there is no wind, no sound, no hurry, just warmth, just color, just the quiet miracle of being alive in a body that knows how to heal itself. Perhaps you might notice that your entire body feels different now, lighter, warmer, and more at ease than it was when you first settled in. Perhaps the world has grown just a little quieter around you. And as the chemistry of compassion completes its first gentle cycle, it does not stop. It simply waits for the next kind thought, the next kind word, the next kind moment. And as these quiet chemicals drift through your body, they find their way to a place that has been listening all along. Your heart. Your heart is not simply a pump. It is one of the most sensitive organs in your body, and it responds to your emotional state with remarkable precision. When you engage in acts of kindness, your heart changes. Its rhythm shifts. Its electrical patterns soften, and the pressure inside your blood vessels decreases. These changes are not subtle. They are measurable, reproducibly, and documented in hundreds of clinical studies. Cardiologists at the HeartMath Institute have spent over 2 decades studying the connection between emotions and cardiac function. Their research shows that feelings of compassion and care produce smooth, coherent heart rhythm patterns, a state associated with reduced cardiovascular strain and improved autonomic balance. Imagine a drum that has been beaten too hard for too long. The rhythm is fast, uneven, and strained. Now imagine a gentle hand resting on the drum, slowing it, steadying it, bringing it back to a rhythm that feels natural. That is what kindness does to your heart. It returns the beat to something your body recognizes as home. Perhaps you might notice your own heartbeat now. Quiet, steady, somewhere beneath the surface of your chest. Perhaps it has been there all along, waiting patiently for you to listen. And as you listen, your heart does not speed up. It does not call for attention. It simply continues, beat after gentle beat, doing what it has always done, keeping you alive with kindness. Blood pressure is one of the most important indicators of cardiovascular health, and it is remarkably sensitive to emotional and behavioral patterns. People who regularly engage in acts of kindness, volunteering, caregiving, or simply offering consistent emotional support tend to have significantly lower resting blood pressure than those who do not. A 2016 study published in the journal Psychology and Health followed over 1,000 participants over a 3-year period and found that those who reported frequent prosocial behavior had lower systolic and diastolic blood pressure, even after adjusting for diet, exercise, and medication use. The researchers concluded that kindness functions as a form of behavioral medicine. Picture a river that has been rushing too fast, crashing against its banks, eroding the stone, churning the water white. Now imagine the river widening, slowing, deepening. The banks no longer strain. The water clears. The current becomes smooth and quiet. That is what regular kindness does to the pressure inside your veins. Perhaps you might notice a softness in your wrists, where the blood flows closest to the surface. Perhaps the pulse there has gentled, as if the river inside you has finally found its pace. And in that quieter current, your heart rests easier. Not because it has stopped working, but because the work has become lighter. Oxytocin, the same hormone released during kindness, has earned another name in the world of cardiology. Researchers now refer to it as the cardioprotective hormone because it directly shields the heart from the damage caused by stress, inflammation, and high blood pressure. Dr. David Hamilton, a former pharmaceutical researcher turned author, has written extensively about oxytocin's role in heart health. He explains that oxytocin binds to receptors on the surface of cardiac cells, triggering a cascade of protective mechanisms, including vasodilation, anti-inflammatory signaling, and the regeneration of heart tissue after injury. A 2009 study in the journal Regulatory Peptides confirmed that oxytocin reduces cardiac cell death during simulated heart attacks in laboratory models. Imagine a shield made not of metal, but of light, soft, translucent, and warm. It does not block the world out. It simply stands between your heart and the things that might harm it, absorbing what it can, and letting the rest pass through gently. That is what oxytocin does for your heart. It protects without hardening. Perhaps you might notice a warmth forming in the center of your chest. Not sharp, not urgent, but steady, like a candle flame that does not flicker, even in a breeze. And as oxytocin wraps itself around your heart, the protection is already in place, quiet, invisible, and older than any medicine you could name. Inflammation inside your blood vessels is one of the leading causes of atherosclerosis, the buildup of plaque that narrows arteries and increases the risk of heart attack and stroke. Oxytocin directly counteracts this process by reducing the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines and promoting the release of anti-inflammatory molecules. Researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden published a study in 2011 showing that oxytocin reduces the expression of inflammatory markers in vascular endothelial cells, the thin layer of cells that line the inside of every blood vessel. When these cells are inflamed, they become sticky and attract the cholesterol and immune cells that form plaque. Oxytocin keeps them smooth. Picture the inside of a river channel after a storm. Debris caught against the banks, silt clouding the water, the flow disrupted. Now imagine a gentle current rising from below, lifting the debris away, clearing the silt, and restoring the channel to its original clarity. That is what oxytocin does inside your blood vessels. It clears the way. Perhaps you might notice the space around your heart feeling a little more open, as if the walls have softened, the passages have widened, and the blood flows just a little more freely. And in that openness, healing flows without effort, steady, patient, and impossibly gentle. Running from the base of your brainstem all the way down through your chest and into your abdomen. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the human body. It touches nearly every major organ, the heart, the lungs, the stomach, the intestines, and it plays a central role in regulating your body's rest and digest system. The parasympathetic nervous system. The vagus nerve gets its name from the Latin word for wanderer, because of how far it travels through the body. Neuroscientists at the University of Virginia have called it the body's information superhighway, transmitting signals between the brain and the organs at remarkable speed. It is responsible for slowing your heart rate, calming your breathing, and activating digestion after a meal. Imagine a silver thread woven through a tapestry, not visible from the front, but holding everything together from behind. It runs through every panel, every color, every figure. Without it, the tapestry would unravel. That is what the vagus nerve does inside your body. It is the quiet thread that holds the fabric of your health in place. Perhaps you might notice a sensation traveling gently down from the base of your skull, a soft current that moves through your throat, past your heart, and into the depth of your belly. And as the vagus nerve continues its ancient journey, it whispers the same message to every organ it passes. Be still. Be calm. You are safe. The path of the vagus nerve is extraordinary. It exits the brainstem at the medulla oblongata, travels through the neck alongside the carotid artery, descends through the chest where it wraps around the heart and lungs, and continues into the abdomen where it connects to the stomach, liver, spleen, and intestines. No other nerve in the body covers such a vast territory. Gastroenterologists have long studied the vagus nerve's role in gut function, and researchers at Johns Hopkins University have shown that it plays a critical role in the gut-brain axis, the bidirectional communication system between your digestive tract and your brain. This is why emotional states like anxiety can cause stomach discomfort, and why gut health can influence mood. Picture a river that begins high in the mountains and travels across an entire continent, passing through forests, plains, and valleys before finally reaching the sea. Along the way, it nourishes everything it touches. That is the journey of your vagus nerve. It begins in your brain and ends in your gut, and every organ along the way depends on its steady flow. Perhaps you might notice your stomach settling, a quiet stillness replacing whatever tension may have gathered there. Perhaps it feels like the end of a long journey, where everything finally comes to rest. And in that rest, the connection between your brain and your body grows stronger, not through effort, but through the simple act of being still. The vagus nerve is not static, like a muscle. It can be strengthened through regular use, and one of the most effective ways to strengthen it is through the practice of compassion. Each time you engage in a kind act, think a compassionate thought, or connect emotionally with another person. The vagus nerve is activated, and over time, this activation makes it stronger and more responsive. Researcher Bethany Koch and psychologist Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina published a groundbreaking study in 2013 showing that participants who practiced loving-kindness meditation over several weeks showed significant increases in vagal tone, a measure of vagus nerve strength. The stronger the vagal tone, the better the body is at calming itself after stress. Imagine a path through a forest that grows wider and clearer the more it is walked. Each footstep presses the soil a little firmer. Each journey makes the way a little easier. That is what compassion does to your vagus nerve. It walks the path again and again, until the way to calm becomes effortless. Perhaps you might notice a deepening in your breath, not because you are trying, but because the pathway between your brain and your lungs has grown just a little smoother. And with each compassionate moment, the nerve grows stronger, the calm comes faster, and the body remembers what peace feels like. When scientists measure the strength of the vagus nerve, they are measuring something called vagal tone. A high vagal tone indicates that the body can efficiently switch between states of alertness and relaxation, that the nervous system is flexible, responsive, and well-regulated. People with high vagal tone tend to recover from stress more quickly, sleep more deeply, and experience greater emotional stability. Stephen Porges, a professor of psychiatry at the University of North Carolina, developed the polyvagal theory, a framework that explains how the vagus nerve governs our sense of safety and social connection. According to Porges, a well-toned vagus nerve allows the body to feel safe in the presence of others, making compassion and connection feel natural rather than effortful. Imagine a tree in a storm, not rigid, not brittle, but bending with the wind. Its roots hold firm, but its branches move freely. When the storm passes, the tree returns to its original shape without a single crack. That is what a strong vagus nerve gives your nervous system: the ability to bend without breaking. Perhaps you might notice a quiet steadiness forming somewhere inside you, not in any one place, but everywhere at once. A sense that your body knows how to hold itself. And in that steadiness, you are not frozen. You are not tense. You are simply ready for rest, for calm, for whatever comes next. Heart rate variability, often abbreviated HRV, is the measurement of the tiny time differences between each heartbeat. A healthy heart does not beat like a metronome. Instead, the intervals between beats fluctuate slightly, reflecting the constant, dynamic interplay between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Higher HRV is a sign of a flexible, well-regulated body. Researchers at the Cleveland Clinic have shown that HRV is one of the most reliable biomarkers for overall health and resilience. It is used to assess cardiovascular fitness, stress levels, and emotional regulation, and it is directly influenced by the strength of the vagus nerve. The stronger the vagal tone, the higher the HRV. Imagine a musician playing a melody, not in perfect mechanical time, but with subtle variations in tempo and dynamics that make the music feel alive. A heartbeat is the same. The tiny variations between beats are not flaws. They are signs of life, of responsiveness, of a body that is listening to the world and adjusting in real time. Perhaps you might notice your heartbeat now. Not loud, not fast, but present. Perhaps between each beat there is a tiny pause, a small silence that holds more meaning than you might expect. And in those small silences, your heart speaks the language of health, not through speed, but through subtlety, not through force, but through flexibility. When your HRV is high, your body is better able to respond to changes in your environment without overreacting. Stressful moments are absorbed more smoothly. Recovery happens more quickly, and the transition from wakefulness to sleep becomes more fluid and natural. A 2017 study in the journal Frontiers in Public Health reviewed over 60 studies and concluded that higher HRV is associated with better emotional regulation, lower anxiety, improved sleep quality, and reduced risk of cardiovascular disease. The researchers noted that interventions that increase vagal tone, including compassion practices, are among the most effective ways to raise HRV. Picture a boat on a lake. When the water is choppy, the boat lurches and sways. But when the water is calm, the boat glides, responding to each ripple with grace, not resistance. High HRV gives your heart that kind of grace. It allows your body to ride the waves of the day without being tossed around by them. Perhaps you might notice that your body has stopped bracing, stopped holding itself tight against the next wave. Perhaps it has realized that the water tonight is still. And in that stillness, your heart responds more gently to everything, including the simple act of resting. Loving kindness, meditation, also known as metta meditation, is a practice in which you silently direct feelings of warmth and goodwill toward yourself and others. It has been practiced for thousands of years in contemplative traditions, and in the past 2 decades, it has become one of the most studied forms of meditation in clinical science. Barbara Fredrickson's 2013 study at the University of North Carolina found that just 6 weeks of loving-kindness meditation produced significant increases in vagal tone. Participants who practiced the meditation reported more positive emotions, greater social connection, and improved physical health. The study concluded that positive emotions and social connection create an upward spiral that strengthens the vagus nerve over time. Imagine sitting by a fire on a cold night, holding your hands toward the warmth. You are not doing anything. You are not trying to change anything. You are simply allowing the warmth to reach you. That is what loving-kindness meditation does. It holds the warmth of your own compassion close enough for your body to feel it. Perhaps you might notice a softness forming behind your sternum, a gentle expansion, as if your chest has quietly made more room for something it cannot name. And as the warmth of that practice moves through your body, the vagus nerve responds, not with effort, but with recognition, as if it has been waiting for this feeling all along. In 2013, Bethany Koch, Kimberly Coffey, Michael Cohn, and Barbara Fredrickson published a study in the journal Psychological Science that revealed something remarkable: a self-reinforcing upward spiral linking positive emotions, social connection, and vagal tone. The researchers tracked participants over 9 weeks and found that those who experienced more positive social interactions showed increases in vagal tone, and those with higher vagal tone, in turn, reported even more positive social interactions. The cycle fed itself. Kindness led to connection. Connection strengthened the vagus nerve, and a stronger vagus nerve made future kindness easier and more natural. Picture a spiral staircase made of light, each step lifting you a little higher, a little closer to something warm. You do not need to climb with effort. Each step simply carries you to the next, and the next, and the next. That is the upward spiral of well-being. Kindness lifts you, and being lifted makes you kinder. Perhaps you might notice something loosening inside you, a knot you did not know was there, slowly unraveling, thread by quiet thread. And as the spiral turns, it does not ask you to keep up. It simply invites you to rest inside its gentle curve and let the motion carry you upward. Positive emotions, joy, gratitude, love, compassion do more than make you feel good. They produce measurable changes in your physiology. When you experience these emotions regularly, your vagus nerve becomes more responsive. Your heart rate variability increases, and your body becomes better calibrated for social engagement. Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory explains that the vagus nerve governs a social engagement system, a set of neural pathways that control facial expression, vocal tone, and the ability to feel safe in the presence of others. When vagal tone is high, this system works more effectively, making it easier to connect, to listen, and to be present with the people around you. Imagine two tuning forks placed side by side. When one is struck, the other begins to hum, not because it was touched, but because it is attuned to the same frequency. That is what positive emotions do to your social engagement system. They tune your body to the frequency of connection, so that when kindness comes near, you are already resonating. Perhaps you might notice your face softening, the muscles around your eyes, your mouth, your jaw releasing a tension you did not realize you were holding. And as your body tunes itself to the frequency of connection, the people around you feel it too, even in silence, even in sleep. The relationship between the vagus nerve and social connection is not one-directional. It is a loop. The stronger your vagus nerve, the easier it is to connect with others. And the more deeply you connect, the stronger your vagus nerve becomes. This bidirectional relationship is one of the most elegant feedback systems in human biology. Researchers at the University of Amsterdam published a meta-analysis in 2019 confirming that social bonding activities, including shared laughter, cooperative tasks, and compassionate dialogue, produce significant increases in vagal tone across diverse populations. The effect was strongest in people who engaged in these activities regularly over time. Picture two trees growing side by side, their roots intertwining beneath the soil. Each tree draws strength from the other, sharing water, sharing nutrients, sharing the quiet work of staying alive. The deeper the roots grow together, the taller both trees stand. That is the relationship between your vagus nerve and your connections with others. Each one nourishes the other. Perhaps you might notice a sense of being held, not by hands, but by something quieter, a feeling that even in this moment of solitude, you are not alone. And in that feeling, the vagus nerve strengthens once more, not because you commanded it, but because connection, even the memory of it, is enough. The upward spiral of kindness, connection, and vagal tone means that every compassionate act you perform makes the next one easier. The neural pathways become more efficient. The chemical responses become faster. The emotional rewards become more accessible. Kindness, in this sense, is not something you spend. It is something you invest, and the returns compound over time. Positive psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky at the University of California, Riverside, has shown that intentional acts of kindness produce sustained increases in well-being, not just in the moment, but over weeks and months. Her research suggests that kindness is one of the most reliable and accessible tools for building long-term emotional health. Imagine a snowball rolling slowly down a gentle hill. It does not grow because it is pushed harder. It grows because each rotation gathers a little more, and a little more, and a little more. That is how kindness builds inside you. Each act adds to the one before it, until the momentum is effortless. Perhaps you might notice that the effort of listening has faded, that you are no longer trying to relax, but simply relaxing. Perhaps the boundary between effort and ease has dissolved, like salt in warm water. And as the spiral continues, kindness builds upon itself, quietly, endlessly, like snow falling on a hill that has no bottom. The rhythm of your heart is not constant. It changes depending on your emotional state. When you feel anxiety or anger, the intervals between heartbeats become erratic and disordered. But when you feel compassion, something different happens. The heart rhythm becomes smooth, coherent, and almost musical in its regularity. Researchers at the HeartMath Institute have documented these changes using electrocardiogram technology and found that compassion produces a distinctive heart rhythm pattern called cardiac coherence. In this state, the heart, brain, and autonomic nervous system synchronize, creating a physiological state that is both deeply calm and highly efficient. Imagine listening to a piece of music where every instrument is perfectly in tune and perfectly in time. There is no dissonance, no rush, no hesitation, just a smooth, flowing sound that makes you want to close your eyes and simply listen. That is what cardiac coherence sounds like inside your body. It is the music your heart plays when you are kind. Perhaps you might notice a rhythm forming in your chest. Not the rhythm of effort, but the rhythm of ease. A slow, steady pulse that feels less like a heartbeat and more like a lullaby. And as your heart finds its compassionate rhythm, the rest of your body follows. Organ by organ, cell by cell, everything begins to synchronize. Cardiac coherence is a measurable physiological state in which the heart's rhythm, the brain's electrical activity, and the autonomic nervous system all align into a harmonious pattern. In this state, the body operates with remarkable efficiency. Stress, hormones decrease, immune function improves, and cognitive clarity increases. The HeartMath Institute has published over 300 peer-reviewed papers on cardiac coherence, showing that it can be reliably induced through focused breathing, gratitude practices, and compassion exercises. A 2015 study found that just 5 minutes of coherence practice produced measurable improvements in cortisol levels, blood pressure, and emotional self-regulation. Picture a flock of starlings moving through an evening sky, thousands of birds turning, rising, and falling in perfect unison. As if guided by a single invisible hand, no one bird leads, no one bird follows. They simply move together, responding to each other in real time. That is cardiac coherence. Your heart, your brain, and your nervous system moving as one. Perhaps you might notice that your thoughts have slowed to match the rhythm of your heart, each one arriving more gently, lingering a little longer, and fading without urgency. And in that synchrony, there is no effort, only harmony. Only the quiet hum of a body that has remembered how to move as one. Not everyone can access cardiac coherence through willpower alone, but research shows that kindness makes it easier. When you engage in compassionate thoughts or actions, your body naturally begins to shift toward coherence. Without special training, without deliberate breathing exercises, without any conscious effort at all. A 2018 study, published in the International Journal of Psychophysiology, found that participants who spent just 10 minutes reflecting on a recent act of kindness showed significant increases in cardiac coherence, compared to a control group who reflected on neutral daily events. The researchers noted that kindness appears to prime the autonomic nervous system for coherence, lowering the threshold for entry. Imagine a door that is usually stiff and heavy, one that requires effort to open. Now imagine that someone has oiled the hinges, so the door swings open at the lightest touch. Kindness oils the hinges of coherence. It makes the door to inner calm swing open more easily, more quietly, and with less resistance. Perhaps you might notice that calm has arrived without you asking for it. That somewhere between the last few breaths, something shifted. A door opened. A threshold was crossed. And on the other side of that door, your body rests in a state it was always designed to reach. Kindness simply showed it the way. When your heart beats in a smooth, coherent pattern, your brain interprets this as a signal of safety. The vagus nerve carries this information from the heart to the brainstem, and the brainstem relays it to the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. When the signal says safe, the amygdala stands down, and the body begins to shift toward rest. Stephen Porges calls this process neuroception, the unconscious detection of safety or danger through internal physiological signals. According to his research, the heart's rhythm is one of the most powerful inputs to this system. A calm heart tells the brain that there is no threat, and the brain responds by releasing the body from its vigilance. Imagine a watchman standing at the top of a tower, scanning the horizon for danger. For hours, the sky has been empty. Finally, the watchman sets down the lantern, leans against the wall, and closes his eyes, not because the danger has been defeated, but because there never was any. That is what a gentle heart rhythm tells your brain. There is nothing to fear. You can rest. Perhaps you might notice your body sinking deeper into wherever you are resting, as if gravity has increased, but only in the kindest possible way. And as your heart continues its gentle pattern, the watchman sleeps, the tower is quiet, and the horizon is still. Most people assume that the brain is in charge, that it sends commands to the heart and the heart obeys. But the truth is more surprising. The heart sends far more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Through the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system, the heart communicates constantly with the brain, influencing your emotional state, your decision-making, and your perception of the world. Researchers at the HeartMath Institute have measured these ascending signals and found that the heart sends approximately 40,000 sensory neurons to the brain through the vagus nerve. These signals influence not only basic regulatory functions, but also higher-order processes like attention, memory, and emotional processing. Imagine a conversation between two old friends. One speaks loudly and often. That is the brain. The other speaks quietly but says more. That is the heart. The brain commands. The heart informs. And more often than you realize, it is the quiet voice that shapes the conversation. Perhaps you might notice that your body is listening to your heart more than your mind right now. Perhaps the thoughts have become quieter, and the heartbeat has become louder, not in volume, but in presence. And in that shift, the heart leads, and the mind follows, gently, willingly, and without resistance. If the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart, then calming the heart is one of the most effective ways to calm the mind. This is not a spiritual metaphor. It is a neurological fact. When the heart rhythm becomes coherent, the signals it sends to the brain become smoother and more organized, and the brain responds by reducing activity in the areas associated with worry, rumination, and hypervigilance. Neuroimaging studies at the University of Montreal have shown that cardiac coherence is associated with reduced activation of the default mode network, the brain system responsible for mind-wandering and self-referential thinking. When the heart is calm, the mind naturally becomes quieter. Imagine a still pond at night. The surface is so smooth that it reflects the stars perfectly. Every point of light captured with absolute clarity. But if you throw a stone into the water, the reflections shatter. A busy heart is like that stone. A calm heart keeps the surface still, and the mind can see clearly. Perhaps you might notice your thoughts have grown quieter, not empty, but spacious, as if someone has turned down the volume on the world, and what remains is only the essential. And in that space, your mind does not need to be silenced. It simply follows the heart into stillness, the way a child follows a parent into sleep. Across multiple studies and multiple decades, the evidence is consistent. People who regularly practice compassion have healthier hearts. They have lower resting blood pressure, better cholesterol profiles, reduced arterial stiffness, and lower rates of coronary artery disease. A 2020 review published in the Journal of the American Heart Association examined the relationship between psychosocial factors and cardiovascular health. The researchers found that optimism, gratitude, and compassion were independently associated with reduced risk of heart disease, even after controlling for traditional risk factors like smoking, obesity, and sedentary behavior. The study concluded that positive psychological attributes should be considered alongside physical interventions in cardiac care. Picture a garden that has been tended with care. The soil is rich, the plants are healthy, and the roots run deep. No single act of gardening created this abundance. It was the accumulation of daily attention, daily watering, daily kindness toward the earth. That is what compassion does to your cardiovascular system. It tends the garden of your heart, one gentle act at a time. Perhaps you might notice your chest feeling more open, as if the space around your heart has expanded, creating room for something quiet and warm to settle in. And in that open space, your heart thrives, not because it was forced, but because it was cared for. Biological aging is not the same as chronological aging. Two people born in the same year can have hearts that function very differently. And one of the factors that determines this difference is the way they live their emotional lives. Research suggests that people who give regularly, through volunteering, caregiving, or consistent acts of kindness, have hearts that age more slowly than those who do not. A longitudinal study published in the journal Aging in 2021 followed over 5,000 adults for 15 years and found that those who reported high levels of prosocial behavior had lower rates of cardiac stiffening, reduced left ventricular hypertrophy, and better diastolic function, all markers of a younger biological heart. Imagine a clock that ticks more slowly, in a room filled with warmth and light. The hands still move, but they take their time. They do not rush toward midnight. They linger in the golden hours. That is what regular giving does to the aging of your heart. It does not stop time. It simply asks it to slow down. Perhaps you might notice a sense of timelessness settling over you, a feeling that the minutes have stretched, that the night is long, and that there is no need to hurry toward anything at all. And in that unhurried moment, your heart rests in its own quiet time, younger than your years, gentler than your days. Every emotional experience you have leaves a trace in the pattern of your heartbeat. The heart, like the brain, has a form of memory, not the kind that stores words or images, but the kind that stores patterns, rhythms, and the physiological echoes of your emotional life. Dr. Andrew Armour, a pioneer in the field of neurocardiology, discovered that the heart contains a network of approximately 40,000 sensory neurons, what he calls the heart brain. These neurons process information independently of the brain in your head, and they encode emotional states into the rhythmic patterns of your heartbeat. Every act of kindness you have ever performed has left its mark on this rhythm. Imagine a piece of music that has been played so many times that the instrument itself remembers the melody, the wood, the strings, the curve of the body, all shaped by the vibrations that have passed through them. Your heart is that instrument. Every kind moment is a note, and together, they form a melody that only your body can hear. Perhaps you might notice your heartbeat as something more than just a pulse, something layered, something textured, something that carries more history than you might expect. And in that rhythm, every kind moment lives on, not as a memory, but as a pattern, not as a thought, but as a beat. You have been resting here for some time now, and your heart has been listening to every quiet truth that has passed through this space. The chemistry of compassion has settled into your blood. The vagus nerve has deepened its hum. The coherence of your heart rhythm has smoothed the edges of your thoughts. And now, at the end of this second chapter, there is nothing left to do but notice. Notice how your heart beats. Not fast, not slow, but gently. A rhythm that carries the memory of every kind moment, every generous thought, every time you chose warmth over indifference. Your heart has been keeping this record all along, not in words, but in beats. Imagine lying in a field of tall grass at night, the stars above you, the earth beneath you, and the only sound in the world is the quiet rhythm of your own heart. It does not ask to be heard. It does not need applause. It simply beats, gently, faithfully, and without condition. Perhaps you might notice that your heart has found a rhythm that feels like home, a steady pulse that requires nothing from you but your trust. And as your heart beats a little more gently, the healing reaches even deeper, past your organs, past your blood, all the way down to the very building blocks of who you are. The healing power of kindness does not stop at your heart. It reaches deeper, past your organs, past your blood, all the way down to the molecular level. Inside every cell of your body, there is a coiled strand of DNA that contains the instructions for everything you are. And kindness, remarkably, can influence how those instructions are read. Researchers in the field of behavioral genomics have shown that emotional states, including compassion, love, and generosity, can alter the activity of specific genes. A landmark study by Steve Cole at the University of California, Los Angeles, found that people who reported high levels of eudaimonic well-being, the kind that comes from purpose and service to others, showed a distinctly different pattern of gene expression compared to those who reported only hedonic pleasure. Imagine a vast library with millions of books, each one containing a different set of instructions. Most of the books remain closed, gathering dust on the shelves. But every now and then, a quiet librarian walks through the aisles and opens one, not at random, but in response to how you live. Kindness is one of the things that guides that librarian's hand. Perhaps you might notice a stillness settling deep inside you, not in your muscles or your skin, but somewhere further in, somewhere you cannot name, but can feel. And in that stillness, your DNA listens, not to your words, but to your actions. And tonight, it hears kindness. Inside the nucleus of every cell, your DNA is organized into structures called chromosomes. And at the very tip of each chromosome, there is a small protective cap called a telomere. Telomeres do not carry genetic information themselves. Instead, they protect the genetic material inside, the way the plastic tip on a shoelace prevents the lace from fraying. Telomeres were first described by geneticist Barbara McClintock in the 1930s, and their role in aging was later elucidated by Elizabeth Blackburn, Carol Greider, and Jack Szostak, work that earned them the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2009. Since then, telomere research has become one of the most active fields in the biology of aging. Picture a candle with a long, steady wick. The flame burns slowly, and as it does, the wick grows shorter, but never disappears entirely. As long as the wick remains, the candle can still give light. Telomeres are like that wick. They shorten over time, but as long as they are protected, your cells continue to function and renew. Perhaps you might notice your body feeling quieter than it did before, as if something deep within your cells has settled. The way dust settles in a room where no one has moved for a very long time. And in that quiet, the telomeres stand guard, small, silent, and essential, protecting the story written inside every cell. Every time a cell divides, the telomeres at the ends of its chromosomes get a little shorter. This is a natural part of the aging process, and it happens in every human being from the moment of birth. Over decades, the telomeres shorten until they reach a critical length, at which point the cell can no longer divide and enters a state called senescence, or it dies. Researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, have shown that the rate of telomere shortening is not fixed. It is influenced by lifestyle factors including diet, exercise, stress, and, importantly, emotional well-being. Chronic stress accelerates telomere shortening, while positive emotional states appear to slow it down. Imagine a sandcastle on the shore, slowly being worn away by the tide. Each wave takes a little more, and over time, the shape changes. But if the tide is gentle, if the waves come slowly and softly, the castle holds its form for much longer. Telomere shortening is like that tide. It cannot be stopped, but it can be gentled. Perhaps you might notice a sense of slow time, as if the minutes have stretched, and the night ahead is longer and kinder than you expected. And in that gentle stretch of time, your telomeres hold on, not forever, but a little longer, a little more gently, because the tide tonight is kind. In 2013, researchers at the University of North Carolina conducted a study in which participants practiced loving-kindness meditation for 12 weeks. At the end of the study, the researchers measured the participants' telomere length and compared it to a control group that did not meditate. The results were striking. The meditation group showed significantly less telomere shortening than the control group. The study, published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology, suggested that the positive emotions generated by compassion practices may protect telomeres by reducing oxidative stress and cortisol, two of the primary biological drivers of telomere degradation. The researchers noted that the effect was comparable to that of regular physical exercise. Picture a gardener wrapping a delicate vine in soft cloth before winter arrives. The vine does not grow during the cold months, but it is protected. When spring comes, it is ready to bloom again. That is what loving-kindness meditation does to your telomeres. It does not make them grow. It keeps them safe. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of being sheltered, not by walls or a roof, but by something invisible and warm. A protection you cannot see, but your body knows is there. And as that protection settles around you, the telomeres rest, wrapped in the quiet cloth of compassion, waiting for the morning. The results of the 12-week study were not marginal. Participants who practiced loving-kindness meditation showed a statistically significant difference in telomere maintenance compared to the control group. This means that the protection was not a coincidence or a placebo effect. It was a measurable biological outcome, confirmed through laboratory analysis of white blood cell telomere length. Further supporting this finding, a 2018 meta-analysis published in the journal Brain, Behavior, and Immunity reviewed multiple studies on meditation and telomere length and concluded that compassion-based practices are among the most effective non-pharmacological interventions for preserving telomere integrity. Imagine two paths through a forest, one exposed to wind and rain, the other sheltered by a canopy of ancient trees. A traveler on the sheltered path arrives at the end less worn, less weathered, and more whole. Compassion is that canopy. It does not remove the journey, but it softens the wear. Perhaps you might notice your eyelids growing heavier, not from exhaustion, but from the kind of weight that comes with deep safety, the weight of knowing you are protected. And beneath that weight, your cells relax, your telomeres hold, and the aging inside you slows. Just a little. With every breath of kindness. If kindness protects telomeres, and telomere length is one of the most reliable markers of biological age, then the implication is extraordinary. Kindness may literally slow down the aging process at the cellular level. This does not mean that kindness prevents aging altogether, but it means that the rate at which your cells deteriorate is influenced by how you treat others and how you treat yourself. Elizabeth Blackburn, the Nobel laureate who co-discovered the enzyme telomerase, has spoken publicly about the link between emotional well-being and cellular aging. In her book, The Telomere Effect, co-authored with health psychologist Elissa Epel, she writes that compassion, purpose, and social connection are among the most powerful protectors of telomere health. Picture a river that flows through two landscapes. In one, the river is turbulent, crashing over rocks, eroding the banks, carrying sediment downstream. In the other, the river is calm, moving slowly, gently, through soft earth that holds its shape. Both rivers flow the same distance, but the calm river leaves less damage in its wake. Kindness makes your biological river calmer. Perhaps you might notice your body feeling younger than it did when you first lay down. Not in years, but in ease. A softness that belongs to a body that has been treated gently. And in that ease, time slows. Not the clock on the wall, but the clock inside your cells. And that is the only clock that matters. For most of the 20th century, scientists believed that genes were destiny, that the instructions coded in your DNA determined everything about your health, your temperament, and your lifespan. But the last 3 decades of research have overturned this view. Your genes are not fixed scripts. They are more like suggestions, and your body decides which suggestions to follow based on how you live. This concept is at the heart of a revolution in biology called epigenetics. Epigenetic researchers have shown that environmental factors, including diet, stress, sleep, and emotional states, can turn genes on or off without changing the underlying DNA sequence. Your genome is the same from birth to death, but which parts of it are active changes constantly. Imagine a piano with 88 keys. The keys are always there. They do not change. But the music that comes from the piano depends entirely on which keys are pressed, how hard, and in what combination. Your genes are the keys. Your life is the music. And kindness, it turns out, plays a very beautiful chord. Perhaps you might notice a sense of possibility settling over you. A quiet realization that what you carry inside you is not a sentence, but a song, and the melody can still change. And as that realization sinks in, your body relaxes a little deeper, because the story is not written yet, and kindness is still holding the pen. When you perform an act of kindness, a series of molecular events occurs inside your cells. Chemical tags called methyl groups attach to specific regions of your DNA, and proteins called histones are modified to either tighten or loosen the packaging around certain genes. These changes determine which genes are expressed, turned on, and which are silenced, turned off. Steve Cole's research at UCLA has shown that people who live with a strong sense of purpose and connection to others show increased expression of anti-inflammatory and antiviral genes, and decreased expression of pro-inflammatory genes. The effect was so consistent that Cole developed a gene expression profile he calls the conserved transcriptional response to adversity, or CTRER, which shifts favorably in response to compassionate living. Picture a switchboard in a control room with hundreds of small lights. Some are green, some are red, some are dark. Kindness reaches into that room and begins to flip switches, dimming the red lights of inflammation and brightening the green lights of healing. It does not change the switchboard. It changes the pattern. Perhaps you might notice something shifting inside you, not in your thoughts, but deeper, in the quiet spaces between your cells, where the instructions are being rewritten as you rest. And in that quiet rewriting, your body learns something new. not because you studied it, but because kindness taught it. Epigenetics, from the Greek prefix epi, meaning above or beyond, is the study of changes in gene expression that occur without altering the DNA sequence itself. It is one of the most exciting and rapidly growing fields in modern biology, and it has fundamentally changed our understanding of health, disease, and the relationship between behavior and biology. The implications of epigenetics are profound. It means that the choices you make every day, what you eat, how you sleep, how you manage stress, and how you treat others, have a direct impact on which genes are active in your body. And these changes are not permanent. They can be reversed, modified, or deepened over time. Your genome is not your fate. It is your starting point. Imagine a book written in invisible ink. The words are there, but they only appear when exposed to a certain kind of light. Epigenetics is the study of that light, the forces that reveal or hide the messages written in your DNA. And kindness, it seems, is one of the brightest lights of all. Perhaps you might notice a sense of wonder forming quietly inside you, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that simply arrives, like a thought you did not expect. And in that wonder, your body is already changing, gene by gene, signal by signal. Kindness is writing a new chapter in a book that only your cells can read. Inflammation is not always harmful. In fact, it is a necessary part of the immune response. But when inflammation becomes chronic, when the immune system stays activated for weeks, months, or years without a clear threat, it begins to damage healthy tissue. Chronic inflammation has been linked to heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and depression. Researchers at UCLA found that compassionate behavior activates a specific set of genes involved in anti-inflammatory signaling. These genes produce proteins that calm the immune system, reduce tissue damage, and promote cellular repair. The effect was strongest in people who reported a deep sense of purpose and meaningful connection with others. Picture a forest after a fire. The ground is scorched, the trees are bare, and the soil is hot. But deep beneath the surface, seeds are waiting. When the rain comes, gentle, steady, patient, those seeds begin to grow. Anti-inflammatory genes are like those seeds. They are always there, waiting for the right signal, and compassion is the rain. Perhaps you might notice a cooling sensation somewhere inside you. Not cold, but soothing, like a cloth placed gently on a warm forehead. And as the anti-inflammatory genes awaken, the fire inside your body begins to settle. Slowly, quietly, one gene at a time, just as compassion activates healing genes. It also quiets the ones associated with chronic stress. These pro-inflammatory genes, part of what Steve Cole calls the threat response profile, are normally activated during periods of danger, loneliness, or prolonged emotional strain. When they remain active for too long, they produce a steady stream of inflammatory molecules that damage the body from the inside. Cole's research has shown that people who shift from a state of isolation to a state of connection and compassion show a measurable decrease in the expression of these stress-related genes. The body, it seems, interprets kindness as a signal of safety and responds by turning down the alarm. Imagine a room where an alarm has been ringing for hours. The sound is exhausting, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Now imagine someone walking into the room and gently pressing the off button. The silence that follows is not empty. It is filled with relief. That is what compassion does to the stress genes in your body. It presses the off button. Perhaps you might notice a sense of relief forming in your body. Not dramatic, not sudden, but steady. As if something that has been running in the background has finally been turned off. And in that silence, your cells exhale. The alarm has stopped, and your body can finally rest. The immune system is your body's defense network, a vast, complex system of cells, proteins, and organs that work together to protect you from infection, disease, and cellular damage. And it is remarkably sensitive to your emotional state. When you are stressed, your immune function declines. When you are calm, connected, and compassionate, it strengthens. A study published in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine in 2012 found that participants who engaged in regular acts of kindness over a 6-week period showed significant increases in immune markers, including immunoglobulin A, an antibody that protects the mucous membranes of the respiratory and digestive tracts. The researchers concluded that kindness has a direct, measurable effect on immune function. Picture a castle surrounded by a moat. When the moat is full, the castle is protected. Invaders cannot cross, and the people inside are safe. When the moat runs dry, the castle is vulnerable. Your immune system is that moat, and kindness fills it. Steadily, quietly, without fanfare. Perhaps you might notice a sense of protection forming around you. Not a wall, but a warmth. As if your body has quietly strengthened its defenses without asking you to do a thing. And in that warmth, your immune system stands a little taller, a little stronger, a little more ready to protect you through the night. Among the most important soldiers in your immune army are cells called natural killer cells, or NK cells. These cells patrol your bloodstream constantly, searching for virus-infected cells and early-stage cancer cells. When they find a threat, they destroy it quickly and efficiently, without waiting for instructions from the rest of the immune system. Research has shown that NK cell activity increases in people who regularly engage in compassionate behavior. A study published in the journal Brain, Behavior, and Immunity found that participants who practiced loving-kindness meditation showed higher levels of NK cell activity compared to a control group, suggesting that compassion directly enhances the body's ability to fight disease. Imagine a team of silent sentinels walking through a sleeping city at night. They do not carry torches. They do not make noise. They simply move from street to street, watching, listening, and keeping the city safe. That is what natural killer cells do inside your body, and kindness increases their numbers. Perhaps you might notice a quiet sense of safety, not the kind that comes from locked doors, but the kind that comes from knowing your body is taking care of itself, even while you sleep. And as the natural killer cells continue their silent patrol, you can rest knowing that the city inside you is well guarded. Kindness has strengthened the watch. Natural killer cells are remarkable not only for their effectiveness, but for their speed. Unlike other immune cells that require days to mount a response, NK cells can recognize and destroy a threat within minutes. They are part of the innate immune system, the body's first line of defense, and they operate with a quiet efficiency that requires no conscious effort on your part. Immunologists at the National Cancer Institute have studied NK cells extensively and found that their activity is closely linked to emotional well-being. People who report higher levels of positive emotion, especially those associated with social connection and compassion, tend to have more active and more effective NK cells. Picture a river that cleans itself. Tiny organisms working beneath the surface to filter impurities, break down waste, and keep the water clear. You cannot see them. You cannot hear them. But without them, the river would grow stagnant. Natural killer cells are the invisible cleaners of your bloodstream, and compassion keeps them working. Perhaps you might notice your breathing deepening on its own, a sign that your body has shifted further into rest, trusting the systems that run beneath your awareness to do their quiet work. And in that trust, your body heals. Not because you asked it to, but because kindness gave it the resources it needed. Chronic inflammation is not a single disease. It is a condition that underlies many of the most serious illnesses of our time. Heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, certain cancers, autoimmune disorders, and clinical depression have all been linked to persistent, low-grade inflammation in the body. The World Health Organization has identified chronic inflammatory diseases as the greatest threat to human health worldwide. And researchers increasingly believe that lifestyle factors, including stress, diet, sleep, and emotional well-being, play a central role in determining whether inflammation becomes chronic. Imagine a slow fire burning beneath the floor of a house. From the outside, everything looks fine. The walls are standing. The roof is intact. But inside, the foundation is weakening. That is what chronic inflammation does to your body. It burns beneath the surface. Invisible but destructive. Perhaps you might notice a desire to be still, not out of fatigue, but out of a quiet instinct to let the fire settle, to let the floor cool, to let the foundation strengthen. And in that stillness, the fire dims, not because you fought it, but because you stopped feeding it. And kindness, as you will soon learn, is one of the most effective ways to let it fade, providing support to others, whether emotional, practical, or simply being present, has been shown to reduce levels of systemic inflammation in the body. This means that the act of giving does not just feel good. It produces a measurable, physiological reduction in one of the most damaging processes in human biology. A 2016 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences measured inflammatory markers in participants who provided social support to others during stressful tasks. The results showed that giving support was associated with lower levels of interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, two key markers of systemic inflammation, even when the giver was under stress themselves. Picture a hand reaching into a pool of troubled water and gently smoothing the surface. The turbulence does not vanish instantly, but it begins to calm. The ripples soften. The clarity returns. That is what giving support does to inflammation inside your body. It smooths what stress has stirred. Perhaps you might notice a gentleness forming in your joints, your shoulders, your elbows, your knees, as if the spaces between your bones have softened. making room for ease. And in that ease, the inflammation retreats, quietly, steadily, and without resistance, because your body knows the difference between stress and kindness. And tonight, kindness is winning. You do not need to perform grand gestures to reduce inflammation. Research shows that small, consistent acts of warmth, a kind word to a colleague, a moment of patience with a stranger, a text message to someone you care about, are enough to shift the balance of inflammatory markers in your blood. A 2019 study in the journal Health Psychology found that participants who performed one small act of kindness per day for 2 weeks showed reductions in C-reactive protein, a widely used measure of inflammation, comparable to the effects of moderate dietary changes. The researchers concluded that kindness operates as a low-dose, high-frequency anti-inflammatory intervention. Imagine rain falling on a dusty road. Each drop is small, barely enough to notice. But over time, the dust settles, the air clears, and the road becomes smooth again. That is what small daily acts of kindness do to the inflammation in your body. Each one is tiny, but together, they clear the way. Perhaps you might notice your body softening in places you did not know were tense. The arches of your feet, the backs of your hands, the skin behind your ears. And as the rain continues to fall, the dust of inflammation settles, drop by quiet drop, kindness by quiet kindness. At the cellular level, kindness creates an environment that supports growth, repair, and renewal. When stress hormones decrease and anti-inflammatory signals increase, your cells are able to devote more energy to maintenance, repairing damaged DNA, producing new proteins, and clearing out cellular waste. This process is essential for long-term health and longevity. Cellular biologists have shown that the intracellular environment is profoundly shaped by the hormonal and chemical signals circulating in the bloodstream. When the signals are dominated by cortisol and inflammatory cytokines, cells enter a defensive mode, conserving energy and delaying repair. When the signals shift toward oxytocin, serotonin, and anti-inflammatory molecules, cells enter a restorative mode. Picture a garden at the end of a drought. The soil is cracked, the leaves are wilted, and the roots strain for moisture. Then the rain comes. Not a storm, but a gentle, soaking rain that lasts for hours. The garden does not recover instantly, but it begins to drink. The soil softens, the leaves lift, the roots uncurl. That is what kindness does to your cells. It is the rain after the drought. Perhaps you might notice a sense of renewal somewhere deep inside. Not a dramatic change, but a quiet turning, like a seed that has just decided to grow. And in that turning, your cells remember what they were made to do. Not to survive, but to thrive. And kindness is the water they have been waiting for. Your body is constantly repairing itself. Every day, billions of cells are replaced. Damaged proteins are recycled, and errors in DNA are corrected by specialized enzymes. This repair work is essential for preventing disease and maintaining healthy function. And it works better in people who feel emotionally connected to others. A 2020 study, published in the journal Molecular Psychiatry, found that social connectedness is associated with higher levels of autophagy, the process by which cells break down and recycle damaged components. The researchers suggested that the reduced stress and lower inflammation associated with social bonding create optimal conditions for cellular housekeeping. Imagine a workshop where skilled hands repair broken things, mending seams, polishing surfaces, replacing worn parts. The workshop runs best when the lights are on, the tools are sharp, and the air is calm. Connection provides those conditions. It turns on the lights, it sharpens the tools, and it fills the workshop with the kind of quiet that allows careful work. Perhaps you might notice your body settling into a deeper level of rest. The kind where repair happens. The kind where the workshop opens its doors. And in that deeper rest, your cells get to work, quietly, skillfully, and with the precision that only peace can provide. Inflammation and sleep are deeply intertwined. When inflammatory markers are elevated, sleep becomes lighter, more fragmented, and less restorative. When inflammation decreases, the body is able to enter deeper stages of sleep, including slow-wave sleep, which is critical for physical repair, memory consolidation, and immune function. Sleep researchers at the University of Pittsburgh have shown that reductions in inflammatory markers, particularly interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein, are associated with significant improvements in sleep quality. The relationship is bidirectional. Better sleep reduces inflammation, and lower inflammation improves sleep, creating a virtuous cycle that kindness helps to initiate. Picture a lake at dusk. When the wind is strong, the surface is choppy and restless. But as the wind dies down, the water stills, and the lake becomes a mirror, reflecting the sky in perfect clarity. Inflammation is the wind, and when kindness calms it, the surface of your sleep becomes smooth and deep. Perhaps you might notice your body drifting a little closer to the edge of sleep now. Not falling, but floating. A gentle descent that requires nothing from you at all. And as inflammation fades, sleep deepens, the lake grows still, and your body sinks into the kind of rest it has been longing for. If kindness reduces cortisol, increases oxytocin, calms inflammation, and activates the parasympathetic nervous system, then performing an act of kindness before bed may be one of the most effective natural sleep aids available. The combination of neurochemical changes and immune system modulation creates the ideal conditions for deep, restorative sleep. Researchers at the University of Oxford have studied the effects of pre-sleep emotional states on sleep architecture and found that participants who engaged in gratitude and compassion exercises before bed showed increased, slow-wave sleep and reduced nighttime awakenings. The effect was especially pronounced in participants who reported high levels of stress during the day. Imagine preparing a room for sleep, dimming the lights, pulling back the covers, placing a glass of water on the bedside table. Each small action creates the conditions for rest. Kindness before bed does the same thing for your body. It dims the internal lights, pulls back the internal tension, and prepares every system for deep, uninterrupted sleep. Perhaps you might notice that your body has already begun this preparation. The lights dimming, the tension easing, the covers of sleep slowly being drawn over you. And in that preparation, you do not need to try to sleep. You simply need to be kind, and sleep will come to you. Every cell in your body is in constant communication with its neighbors. They send and receive tiny chemical signals called cytokines, hormones, and neurotransmitters, molecular messages that coordinate everything from immune responses to tissue repair to emotional states. This cellular conversation never stops, even while you sleep. Cell biologists at MIT have mapped these communication networks and found that they are extraordinarily complex. A single cell can send and receive thousands of signals per second. The nature of these signals depends largely on the body's internal environment. In a state of stress, the signals tend toward alarm and defense. In a state of calm and connection, they shift toward cooperation and repair. Imagine a city at night, where millions of tiny lights flicker in windows. Each one a message, a conversation, a quiet exchange between neighbors. From above, the city glows. That is what your body looks like at the cellular level. Billions of tiny lights, flickering in coordination, speaking a language older than words. Perhaps you might notice a hum inside you, not a sound you can hear, but a feeling, a vibration of life, quiet and continuous, like the distant murmur of a city that never sleeps. And in that hum, your cells are talking. And tonight, because of kindness, the conversation is one of healing. When kindness enters the equation, the chemical conversation between your cells changes. The alarm signals, cortisol, adrenaline, pro-inflammatory cytokines, grow quieter, and the repair signals, oxytocin, anti-inflammatory interleukins, growth factors, grow louder. The result is a body-wide shift from defense to restoration. Researchers at the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital have documented this shift in detail, showing that relaxation and compassion practices produce what they call the relaxation response, a coordinated change in gene expression that favors cellular repair, energy metabolism, and immune regulation. Picture a radio tuned to a noisy station. Static, interference, fragments of sound. Now imagine slowly turning the dial until the static fades and a clear, beautiful melody emerges. Kindness is the hand that turns the dial. It does not create new signals. It simply tunes your body to the ones that heal. Perhaps you might notice the static fading now, the noise of the day growing distant, the thoughts growing quieter, the body settling into a frequency that feels like home. And on that frequency, every cell in your body is listening, and what they hear is kindness, and what they do in response is heal. From the neurotransmitters in your brain to the rhythm of your heart, from the genes in your DNA to the immune cells in your blood, compassion touches every level of your biology. It is not a single mechanism or a single pathway. It is a whole body response that integrates the nervous system, the endocrine system, the immune system, and the cellular repair network into a unified state of healing. This integrative view of compassion is supported by decades of research across multiple disciplines. Neuroscientists, cardiologists, immunologists, and geneticists have all arrived at the same conclusion from different directions. Kindness heals, and it heals at every level. Imagine standing inside a cathedral, where every surface, the floor, the walls, the ceiling, the stained glass, is resonating with the same note. The sound does not come from any one place. It comes from everywhere at once. That is what compassion does inside your body. It resonates through every system, every organ, every cell, a single, unified vibration of healing. Perhaps you might notice that your entire body feels unified now. Not separate parts resting separately, but one whole being, resting as one. And in that unity, the healing is complete. Not because every cell has been fixed, but because every cell has been included. Every system has been heard, and every part of you is resting in the same quiet note. Your skin, the largest organ in your body, responds to kindness through the release of oxytocin receptors on its surface. Your telomeres, among the smallest functional structures in your cells, are protected by the emotional states that kindness creates. Between these two extremes, every organ, every tissue, every molecule is touched by the biology of compassion. The evidence is not anecdotal. It is measured in blood samples and brain scans, in heart rhythm data and gene expression profiles. It has been replicated in laboratories around the world. At Harvard, Stanford, UCLA, the Max Planck Institute, and countless others. Kindness is not just a virtue. It is a biological force. Imagine a wave of warm light passing through your body, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet, touching everything in its path, not changing it dramatically, but warming it, softening it, leaving a gentle mark that says, "I was here." That is what kindness does. From your largest organ to your smallest molecule, it leaves its mark. Perhaps you might notice that warmth now, moving through you like a wave of golden light, from your head to your toes, from your skin to your cells, from the surface of your body to the deepest part of who you are. And as kindness moves through every cell of your body, it does something remarkable. It begins to move beyond you, outward, like ripples in a still pond. Deep inside your brain, there is a special class of cells that scientists call mirror neurons. These neurons do something extraordinary. They fire not only when you perform an action, but also when you watch someone else perform the same action. They are the reason you flinch when you see someone stumble, the reason you tear up during a movie, and the reason kindness can spread from one person to another without a single word. Mirror neurons were first identified in the premotor cortex of macaque monkeys in the early 1990s, and subsequent research has confirmed their existence in the human brain. Neuroscientists believe they play a fundamental role in empathy, imitation, and social learning, the building blocks of compassion. Imagine a still pond in which every movement on the surface is instantly reflected. A leaf falls, and the water responds. A bird dips its wing, and the surface ripples. Mirror neurons work the same way. They reflect the actions and emotions of others inside your own brain, creating an internal echo of what you see. Perhaps you might notice a quietness forming behind your eyes, a softness in the way you are looking at the darkness, as if even with your eyes closed, you are still watching something gentle. And in that gentle watching, your brain mirrors the kindness that surrounds you, not because you asked it to, but because that is what mirror neurons were made to do. The defining feature of mirror neurons is their dual activation. They respond both to doing and to observing. When you reach for a glass of water, certain neurons in your premotor cortex fire, And when you watch someone else reach for a glass of water, the same neurons fire again. Your brain does not fully distinguish between self and other. At the neural level, watching kindness is almost the same as performing it. This discovery has profound implications for our understanding of empathy and compassion. It means that the human brain is wired not for isolation, but for connection. Every time you witness an act of kindness, your brain rehearses it internally, strengthening the neural pathways associated with compassionate behavior. Picture two candles facing each other across a dark room. When one flickers, the other seems to respond, not because they are connected by flame, but because the light from one illuminates the other. Mirror neurons create that kind of invisible connection between human beings. Your brain lights up in response to the light in someone else. Perhaps you might notice a warmth forming in the space between your thoughts. Not a thought itself, but a feeling, a quiet echo of something kind. And in that echo, your brain is already rehearsing kindness, preparing the pathways, readying itself for the next compassionate moment. The discovery of mirror neurons is one of the most significant findings in modern neuroscience. It was made by Italian neurophysiologist Giacomo Rizzolatti and his team at the University of Parma in 1992. The discovery happened partly by accident. The researchers were studying motor neurons in monkeys when they noticed that certain neurons fired not only when the monkey grasped an object, but also when it watched a researcher grasp one. Rizzolatti initially called them monkey-see, monkey-do neurons before the term mirror neurons was adopted. Since then, mirror neuron research has expanded into dozens of fields, including psychology, linguistics, education, and social neuroscience. The discovery is now considered one of the most important contributions to our understanding of how humans connect with one another. Imagine a scientist sitting in a quiet laboratory, watching a line on a screen suddenly spike at an unexpected moment. That single spike, that tiny blip of electrical activity, opened a window into one of the deepest mysteries of human nature. Why do we care about each other? Why does kindness move us? The answer, it turns out, was already firing inside our brains. Perhaps you might notice your body settling a little deeper, as if the weight of these discoveries has added a gentle layer of comfort to the night. And in that comfort, the mirror neurons rest too. They do not need to fire tonight. They simply hold the pattern of every kind thing you have ever seen. Smiling is contagious, and the reason is biological. When you see another person smile, your mirror neurons activate the same facial muscles in your own face, often before you are consciously aware of it. This automatic mimicry is one of the most basic forms of social bonding, and it is powered entirely by the mirror neuron system. Researchers at Uppsala University in Sweden used electromyography to measure the tiny muscle movements in participants' faces while they viewed photographs of smiling and frowning individuals. They found that participants' facial muscles automatically mimicked the expression they saw, even when they were instructed to remain neutral. The response was involuntary and instantaneous. Picture a field of sunflowers turning their faces toward the sun. They do not decide to turn. They simply respond to the light. Your smile works the same way. When kindness appears in front of you, your face turns toward it. Not because you chose to, but because you were built to. Perhaps you might notice the corners of your mouth softening, not into a full smile, but into something close. A quiet readiness to smile, as if your face is waiting for a reason that has not quite arrived. And in that readiness, your mirror neurons hold the shape of every smile you have ever seen. And tonight, that shape is enough. When you witness someone help another person, offering a seat, carrying a bag, speaking a word of comfort, your brain activates the same reward pathways that would fire if you had done it yourself. The ventral striatum lights up, dopamine is released, oxytocin begins to flow. Your body responds as if you were the one being kind. This phenomenon was confirmed in a 2010 study published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, which used functional MRI to scan the brains of participants while they watched acts of generosity. The researchers found that observing kindness produced activation patterns nearly identical to those seen during direct acts of giving. Imagine sitting in a concert hall, listening to a piece of music so beautiful it brings tears to your eyes. You are not playing the instrument. You are not singing the song. And yet the music moves through you as if you were the one creating it. That is what witnessing kindness does to your brain. It plays the same melody, even when your hands are still. Perhaps you might notice a fullness in your chest, not pressure, but presence, as if something inside you has expanded to hold more than it did before. And in that fullness, you are both the giver and the witness, both the candle and the light, and the healing belongs to you just the same. From a neurochemical standpoint, your brain responds to witnessed kindness almost identically to kindness performed. The same hormones are released. The same brain regions are activated. The same feelings of warmth, connection, and well-being are produced. This means that even in moments when you cannot act, simply being present for kindness is enough to receive its biological benefits. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who coined the term moral elevation, has shown that witnessing virtuous acts produces a distinctive emotional response, including warmth in the chest, a lump in the throat, and a desire to be better. These physical sensations are not metaphors. They are the body's response to the neurochemical cascade triggered by observing goodness. Picture rain falling on two gardens at the same time, one where you planted the seeds and one where someone else did. Both gardens receive the same water. Both gardens grow. Kindness works the same way. It does not matter who planted it. If you are near it, it nourishes you. Perhaps you might notice that warmth in your chest now, a gentle glow that has been building quietly throughout this night. Not because you did something kind, but because you have been near kindness all along. And in that glow, your brain does not ask who gave and who received. It simply heals, because kindness, witnessed or given, is still kindness. Kindness spreads, not through logic or persuasion, but through biology. When you perform an act of kindness, the person who receives it experiences a neurochemical response that makes them more likely to be kind to someone else. And the person who witnesses it experiences the same response. This creates a chain reaction, a cascade of compassion that moves through social networks like warmth through water. Researchers at the University of California, San Diego, and Harvard University have documented this cascade in a series of landmark studies. They found that a single act of kindness can influence the behavior of people up to 3 degrees of social separation away, meaning your kindness can affect someone you have never met. Imagine dropping a single stone into a perfectly still lake. The ripple begins small, a tiny circle around the point of impact, but it expands outward, growing wider and wider, touching shores you cannot see from where you stand. That is what kindness does in the world. It begins with one act, and it ripples outward in every direction. Perhaps you might notice a sense of expansion, as if the warmth inside you has begun to move beyond the boundaries of your body, reaching outward into the room, into the night, into the world. And in that expansion, you are no longer just a person resting. You are a ripple, and the pond has no edge. Emotional contagion is the scientific term for the way emotions spread from person to person, often without conscious awareness. Just as a yawn can travel across a room, kindness can travel across a community, carried not by words, but by subtle cues in facial expression, vocal tone, body language, and behavior. Researchers at Yale University have shown that emotional contagion operates through the mirror neuron system and the autonomic nervous system. When you are near someone who is calm and kind, your own nervous system begins to mirror that state. Your heart rate slows, your breathing deepens, your muscles relax. You catch their calm the way you might catch their smile. Picture a room full of sleeping children, each one breathing in their own rhythm, slowly, without anyone noticing. Their breaths begin to synchronize, one by one, until the room breathes as one. That is emotional contagion. It does not ask for permission. It simply happens. And kindness is one of the most contagious emotions of all. Perhaps you might notice your own breathing has found a rhythm that feels borrowed, as if someone else's calm has drifted into your body and settled there like a guest who plans to stay. And in that borrowed calm, you are part of something larger, a network of quiet kindness, breathing together in the dark. The reach of a single act of kindness is far greater than most people realize. Research by Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, published in 2010, showed that cooperative behavior spreads through social networks up to 3 degrees of separation. This means that if you are kind to someone, that person is more likely to be kind to someone else, who is then more likely to be kind to someone else, and so on. The researchers used a public goods game, an economic experiment designed to measure cooperative behavior, and found that each act of generosity multiplied as it moved through the network. $1 of kindness generated $3 additional of cooperative behavior in others. The effect diminished with distance, but remained statistically significant through 3 degrees. Imagine a pebble dropped into water, creating ripples that reach the far shore. Now imagine that each ripple, upon reaching the shore, sends back its own ripple. Smaller, but still real. That is the 3-degree effect of kindness. It does not stop where you think it stops. It keeps moving, long after you have forgotten it began. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of connection to people you have never met. A quiet awareness that your kindness has traveled further than you will ever know. And in that awareness, you rest a little easier, because the kindness you have given is still moving, still rippling, still reaching someone, somewhere, tonight. James Fowler, a political scientist at the University of California, San Diego, and Nicholas Christakis, a sociologist at Harvard, spent over a decade studying how behaviors and emotions spread through social networks. Their research, published in journals including the British Medical Journal and the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, revealed that happiness, generosity, and kindness all propagate through social ties in predictable, measurable ways. Their work showed that you are influenced not only by the people you know, but by the people they know, and by the people those people know. Your social network is not a collection of isolated individuals. It is a living system, and kindness is one of the signals that moves through it. Picture a web of light strung between trees in a forest at night. When one point of light brightens, the glow travels along the threads to the next point, and the next, and the next. The forest does not need to be told to glow. It simply responds to the light that moves through it. That is your social network, and kindness is the light. Perhaps you might notice a sense of belonging, not to a place, but to a web, a quiet network of warmth that stretches further than you can see. And in that web, your light is still shining, even now, even in sleep. You do not need to witness an act of kindness directly to be affected by it. Research on emotional contagion shows that the effects of kindness can reach you through indirect channels, through the improved mood of a colleague, the patience of a stranger, or the calm in a room where someone has recently been kind. The ripple arrives before you know its origin. A 2014 study in the journal PLOS ONE found that exposure to prosocial environments, spaces where kindness has recently occurred, was associated with improved mood, reduced stress, and increased cooperative behavior in newcomers, even when they had no knowledge of the original kind act. Imagine walking into a room where someone has just finished playing a beautiful piece of music. The musician has left, but the feeling remains. A warmth in the air, a softness in the silence. You do not know what happened, but your body responds as if it does. That is the invisible reach of kindness. It changes the air. Perhaps you might notice that the space around you feels different now. Softer, warmer, more still, as if something kind happened here before you arrived. And in that changed air, you breathe a little deeper, and your body thanks you for something you did not even know you received. Empathy is not a skill that is taught. It is a capacity that is built into the human brain from birth. Newborn babies cry in response to the distress of other babies, a phenomenon called reflexive crying. And infants as young as 6 months show preferential attention to helpful characters over unhelpful ones in puppet shows. Developmental psychologists at Yale's Infant Cognition Center, led by Karen Wynn, have conducted dozens of experiments showing that babies are drawn to kindness and cooperation from the earliest months of life. The capacity for empathy, it appears, is not learned from culture. It is woven into the architecture of the human brain. Imagine a seed buried in the earth before the first rain has fallen. It does not know what rain is. It does not understand the sun. And yet, it is already shaped to grow toward both. That is empathy in the human brain. It is there before language, before memory, before understanding. It is there because it was always meant to be. Perhaps you might notice something ancient and familiar stirring inside you. Not a thought, but an instinct, a pull toward warmth that has been with you since before you can remember. And in that pull, you remember something your body has never forgotten. You were made for connection. You were made for kindness. You were made for this. before they can speak in full sentences, before they can tie their shoes, before they can write their names. Human babies help. At 14 months of age, toddlers will spontaneously assist an adult who is struggling, picking up a dropped object, opening a cabinet door, or removing an obstacle without being asked, without being rewarded, and without being taught. Developmental psychologist Felix Warneken at Harvard University has conducted extensive research on early helping behavior and found that it is intrinsic, cross-cultural, and appears to be motivated by genuine concern for others rather than by expectation of reward. Warneken's work suggests that the impulse to help is one of the earliest and most robust social behaviors in human development. Picture a tiny hand reaching out to help, not because it was told to, not because it expects something in return, but simply because it can. That small gesture, performed by a child who barely understands the world, is proof of something science is only now beginning to measure. Kindness is not something we invent. It is something we are born with. Perhaps you might notice a tenderness forming somewhere inside you, a softness toward the smallest, most instinctive part of yourself, the part that has always wanted to help. And in that tenderness, you are that child again, small, open, and reaching out, not because you were told to, but because it is who you are. The evidence from neuroscience, developmental psychology, and evolutionary biology all points in the same direction. Compassion is not a learned behavior layered on top of a selfish nature. It is a fundamental part of what it means to be human. Mirror neurons, oxytocin systems, vagal circuitry, and helping instincts all emerge early in development, suggesting that the capacity for kindness is built into the human organism from the very beginning. Psychologist Dacher Keltner at the University of California, Berkeley, has argued that compassion is not an anomaly in human nature. It is the norm. In his book, Born to be Good, Keltner presents decades of evidence showing that humans evolved to cooperate, to care, and to connect. Selfishness, he argues, is the aberration. Kindness is the baseline. Imagine a river that has been flowing since before anyone was alive to name it. It does not flow because someone told it to. It flows because that is its nature. Compassion is like that river. It does not need to be taught or commanded. It simply flows. Through your cells, through your heart, through your hands. Because that is what it was always meant to do. Perhaps you might notice your body relaxing into something that feels like permission. Permission to be kind without effort, without reason, without justification. And in that permission, you are not becoming kind. You are returning to what you have always been. Of all the factors that predict how long a person will live, social connection is among the most powerful, stronger than diet, stronger than exercise, stronger than whether or not you smoke. The quality of your relationships and the kindness that sustains them has a direct, measurable effect on how many years you will live. A 2010 meta-analysis by Julian Holt-Lundstad and colleagues, published in PLOS Medicine, reviewed data from over 300,000 participants and found that strong social connections increased the odds of survival by 50%. The researchers concluded that social isolation is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Picture a single thread. It is thin, fragile, easy to break. Now picture 100 threads woven together into a rope. The rope is strong, strong enough to hold, strong enough to last. Each thread is a connection. Each connection is strengthened by kindness. And the rope, woven over a lifetime, is what keeps you here. Perhaps you might notice a sense of gratitude forming, not for anything in particular, but for the connections that have held you, the people who have been kind, the moments that have woven themselves into the rope of your life. And in that gratitude, the rope holds, quietly, firmly, and without asking to be thanked. The data is striking. People who maintain strong, meaningful social connections live, on average, 7.5 years longer than those who are socially isolated. This figure comes from multiple longitudinal studies, including the Alameda County study and the Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies of human health in history. Robert Waldinger, the current director of the Harvard study, has said that the clearest message from over 80 years of data is this: good relationships keep us healthier and happier. It is not wealth, fame, or achievement that predicts a long life. It is the warmth of the people around you, and that warmth is sustained, above all, by kindness. Imagine 2 trees in a forest. One stands alone at the edge of a clearing, exposed to every storm. The other stands in the middle of the forest, surrounded by other trees that break the wind and share the rain. The sheltered tree lives longer, not because it is stronger, but because it is held. That is what social connection does for a human life. It holds you, and kindness is the soil in which it grows. Perhaps you might notice a deepening in your rest, as if the act of being connected to others, even in memory, has added something to the foundation of your sleep. And in that deepened rest, your life extends, not in years you can count, but in moments you can feel, moments like this one. Loneliness is not merely an emotional experience. It is a physiological state that produces measurable changes in the body, including elevated cortisol, increased inflammation, weakened immune function, and disrupted sleep. The U.S. Surgeon General declared loneliness a public health epidemic in 2023, citing research showing that chronic loneliness carries the same mortality risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Steve Cole's research at UCLA has shown that loneliness alters gene expression in ways that promote inflammation and suppress antiviral responses. The exact opposite of what compassion does. The lonely body, it seems, is a body on high alert, braced for danger, even when none exists. Imagine a house with all its doors and windows locked. Even on a beautiful day, the air inside grows stale, the light fades, the walls close in. That is what loneliness does to the body. It locks the doors against the world, and in doing so, it locks out the healing that connection brings. Perhaps you might notice that your doors are open tonight, that the air is moving freely, that the light is soft, and that the world outside feels safe. And in that openness, loneliness retreats, not because you forced it out, but because kindness opened the door. If loneliness is a locked door, then kindness is the key. Research consistently shows that engaging in acts of kindness, even small ones, even towards strangers, is one of the most effective ways to reduce feelings of social isolation. Kindness creates connection, and connection is the antidote to loneliness. A 2019 randomized controlled trial, published in the journal Emotion, found that participants who performed 3 acts of kindness per week over 4 weeks showed significant reductions in loneliness and significant increases in positive social interactions. The effect was strongest in participants who began the study feeling the most isolated. Picture a bridge being built between 2 distant shores. Each act of kindness is a plank laid across the gap. One plank is not enough to cross, but over time, plank by plank, the bridge takes shape, and one day, without fanfare, you realize you are no longer alone. The bridge is there, and kindness built it. Perhaps you might notice that even now, in the quiet of this moment, you are not alone. These words are a kind of company. This space is a kind of connection. And in that connection, the loneliness dissolves. Not all at once, but enough. Enough for tonight. Enough for rest. The health effects of kindness are not limited to individuals. Entire communities benefit when compassion is practiced collectively. Research has shown that neighborhoods and societies with higher levels of social trust, cooperation, and mutual aid have lower rates of heart disease, lower rates of mental illness, and longer average lifespans. The Rosetto effect, named after the town of Roseto, Pennsylvania, is one of the most famous examples. In the 1960s, researchers discovered that Roseto had remarkably low rates of heart disease, despite a diet high in fat and a population with many smokers. The reason, they concluded, was the town's extraordinary social cohesion, close family ties, communal meals, and a culture of mutual support. Picture a village where every door is open, where neighbors share bread and laughter, and where no one eats alone. The village is not wealthy. It is not modern, but it is healthy. Healthier than cities with the finest hospitals. Because the medicine this village runs on is not prescribed, it is practiced, and its name is kindness. Perhaps you might notice a longing for that kind of village, a place where kindness is the norm, not the exception. Perhaps that longing is itself a kind of compass, pointing you towards something real. And in that longing, you are already closer to the village than you think, because you carry it inside you. And tonight, it is open. Communities that practice collective compassion do not only live longer, they live better. Researchers have found that social cohesion and mutual aid are among the strongest predictors of life satisfaction, surpassing income, education, and even physical health. The World Happiness Report, published annually by the United Nations, consistently ranks social support as one of the top 3 determinants of national happiness. Countries with the highest levels of trust, generosity, and community engagement, such as Finland, Denmark, and Iceland, consistently rank among the happiest in the world. Imagine a bowl filled not with water, but with warmth. Each act of kindness adds a little more. Each connection deepens the glow. Over time, the bowl overflows, not with excess, but with abundance. And everyone nearby is warmed by what spills over. That is what life satisfaction looks like in a compassionate community. It is not about having more. It is about being more. Together, Perhaps you might notice a feeling of fullness, not in your body, but in your sense of being alive, a quiet satisfaction that does not need anything added to it. And in that fullness, the night feels complete, not because everything has been said, but because enough has been felt. Kindness is not a one-time event. It is a self-reinforcing cycle. When you are kind, your brain releases chemicals that make you feel good. That feeling makes you more likely to be kind again. And each repetition strengthens the neural pathways involved, making compassion progressively easier, more natural, and more automatic. This process is rooted in the brain's reward circuitry and its capacity for neuroplasticity, the ability to reorganize and strengthen connections in response to repeated experience. Each act of kindness is like a repetition in the gym. The more you practice, the stronger the circuit becomes. Imagine a path through a meadow. The first time you walk it, the grass is tall and the way is unclear. The second time, the grass is a little shorter. The third time, a trail begins to form. After 100 walks, the path is smooth and easy. That is what kindness does to your brain. It wears a path, and eventually, the path walks itself. Perhaps you might notice that the kindness you have been receiving tonight has become easier to absorb, that your body is no longer resisting rest, but welcoming it. The path is smooth now, and on that smooth path, kindness walks forward, not because it must, but because it can. And the walk gets easier with every step. Neuroplasticity means that your brain is not fixed. It changes in response to what you do, what you think, and what you practice. And when you practice kindness, the regions of your brain associated with empathy, reward, and social connection grow stronger and more interconnected. Dr. Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin-Madison has used functional MRI to show that just 2 weeks of compassion training produces visible changes in the brain. Increased activity in the insula and the anterior cingulate cortex, regions associated with empathy and emotional regulation. The brain, he says, can be trained in kindness the way the body can be trained in fitness. Picture a river that grows wider the more water flows through it. Each raindrop adds to the current. Each current carves the banks a little deeper. Over time, the river that was once a trickle becomes a steady, powerful flow. That is what happens to the kindness circuits in your brain. The more you give, the wider the river becomes. Perhaps you might notice that giving, even the act of receiving these quiet truths, has become effortless, as if the river inside you has been flowing all night, and it has finally found the sea. And in that effortless flow, your brain has learned something it will not forget. Kindness is not a sacrifice. It is a current, and the more it flows, the more there is. Neural plasticity, or neuroplasticity, is the brain's ability to reorganize its structure and function in response to experience. Every thought you think, every action you take, and every emotion you feel leaves a physical trace in the architecture of your brain. And when that experience is kindness, the trace it leaves is one of connection, warmth, and resilience. The implications are profound. It means that you are not stuck with the brain you have. You can reshape it. And one of the simplest, most effective ways to reshape it is through repeated acts of compassion. Over time, kindness literally rewires your brain, strengthening the circuits of empathy and quieting the circuits of fear. Imagine a sculptor working with soft clay. Each touch of the hand leaves an impression. Over time, the impressions accumulate, and a form begins to emerge. Your brain is the clay, and kindness is the hand that shapes it. Gently, patiently, and with infinite care. Perhaps you might notice your mind feeling different than it did at the beginning of this night. Softer, quieter, more open, as if the clay has been worked by gentle hands while you were resting. And in that softer shape, your brain carries the imprint of every kind truth it has heard tonight. And tomorrow, it will be a little more ready to be kind. Every act of kindness you have ever performed has left a mark on your biology. The oxytocin that softened your blood vessels, the serotonin that steadied your mood, the endorphins that eased your pain, the vagal tone that deepened your calm, the telomeres that held their length, the genes that shifted toward healing, the mirror neurons that connected you to every kind soul you have ever known. You are not a machine that occasionally produces kindness. You are a body that has been shaped by it, cell by cell, beat by beat, molecule by molecule. Kindness is not something you add to your life. It is something your life is made from. Imagine a coral reef, built not by a single organism, but by millions of tiny creatures, each one adding its own small contribution over centuries. The reef is not planned. It is grown, and each small act of growth creates something vast, beautiful, and alive. You are that reef, and every kind moment is a coral polyp, small, quiet, and essential. Perhaps you might notice a deep sense of being, not doing, not thinking, not trying, just being. A feeling that you are exactly where you need to be, exactly as you are. And in that being, you are not just a person who has been kind. You are a person who is made of kindness. And that is the most beautiful thing science has ever found. You have traveled a long way tonight, from the chemistry of your brain to the rhythm of your heart, from the genes in your cells to the ripples that move through the world around you. 100 quiet truths, each one a reminder that kindness is not just an idea, it is a force that heals your body, strengthens your heart, protects your cells, and connects you to every living being. And now, at the end of this journey, there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to learn, nothing left to do. There is only this, a body resting in the quiet knowledge that it was made for kindness, that every cell remembers, that every heartbeat carries the echo of every gentle thing you have ever done. You are made of kindness. Every cell remembers. So let your eyes stay closed. Let your body stay still. Let the ripple of every kind moment you have ever known carry you gently into the deepest, most healing sleep of your life. You do not need to hold on to anything you have heard tonight. Your body has already absorbed it. Your cells have already responded. The healing is already underway. And as sleep arrives, as the last light of awareness dims, there is one more thing I want you to know. You are kind. You have always been kind, and your kindness has changed the world in ways you will never fully see, but that science is only now beginning to measure. So rest now. Rest deeply. Rest completely. And let every cell in your body do what it does best. Heal. Repair. And remember that you are made of kindness. Good night.